I'm glad to be with you today. Whether you present regularly or just occasionally, this webinar is going to give you practical tools that you can use immediately in your next meeting, your next full presentation, a briefing. The goal is not to just help you present better, but to help you present with clarity, confidence, and purpose. So I want us to start off by just saying hello in the chat. Introduce yourself, get to know who's here, where you're coming from, your role, and I'll tell you just a little bit about me. My background is in communication, and so I typically blend communication, leadership, and instructional design. I currently serve as the Director of Program Development and Design with the Executive Education and Professional Advancement Division with ACU Dallas. I work with professionals and students to develop clear, confident, and authentic communication skills. Most of my work focuses on helping leaders and teams translate their ideas into messages that they can connect and inspire and communicate with action. Again, that could be in a meeting, in a boardroom, in a classroom, on the field even. My professional strengths are rooted in empathy, connectedness, and adaptability. And I bring those to every presentation I give and to every learning experience I design. Today's session comes straight from both research and experience, real strategies you can apply right away to organize your message, connect authentically with your audience, and present with impact. All right. Welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I see all of those introductions in the chat, and it's nice to have you here. All right. So I want to start off. I'm going to launch a poll, and I want to hear from you. So I will occasionally make sure that you guys are there. I want to get you involved, and I want to hear your thoughts as we go through this so that we can make the most impact with the presentation today. So I'll ask you, which part of presenting is most challenging for you? And so if you can go ahead and take a moment and answer this poll, I'll give you just a few minutes and then we'll take a look at the results and share. But I just want to get a sense of where you are as we start this presentation. And again, I'll share those here in a moment. I just want to know kind of what you think is most challenging for you. Is it organizing the message, engaging the audience, visual design, managing speech anxiety, or maybe it's all of the above, right? We'll give it just another minute. We've got 51 of 67. That way you get a chance to respond, maybe get to as close to 100% as we can, and we can share those results and kind of see what we think is the biggest. And see if you have any guesses what the biggest could be, or the most challenging for everyone. Now, as you vote, it should go away, and then here I'll end the poll, and we will review those results together, just so you can see where everyone is at, and we'll keep moving along and continue with our presentation. All right. Okay, we are at 85%, so I'm going to share these results so you can see where we are and what the highest was. And I'm not sure if you're surprised, but managing speech anxiety was the top challenge for most of you in here. And so that is a component we will certainly address. We're going to address all of these today. And so that way I wanted to get a feel for where we needed to place a little bit more emphasis. And so we'll make sure to cover each of these and give you again those tools that you can take and use immediately in your next presentation. Okay, let's keep moving then, and we will now think about and connect this to what really is the job of a presenter. What is the core responsibility of someone who's standing up and sharing a message? So as you think about that, is it to inform? Is it to inspire? You can share in the chat if you'd like. When you give a presentation, what is your role? What is your job as the presenter? There are a lot of things that we need to do as presenters. And again, we'll talk about that. The idea behind this, of course, is that it's not about just providing information. It's about creating understanding and meaning. And so a lot of what we'll focus on today is that. not just transferring that information, but yes, engaging, informing, absolutely inspiring. Love that. And yes, there is some challenges along the way, right, that we'll talk about. But yeah, you're right. I'll effectively communicate and engage on a particular topic. Thank you so much. Yeah, we do want to inform, right? We need to make sure that we get our message across, but absolutely, the key part there, like April said, is to make sure they understand that message. Yes, absolutely. So I want to share with you an example, a short clip from Drew Dudley, a speaker who does something really powerful. So I won't say what he does yet. I want you to watch this. I want you to pay attention, not just to the content, but to the communication choices that he's making as he's delivering his presentation. And we'll talk about it here in just a moment. So let me play this for you.
How many of you are completely comfortable with calling yourselves a leader? See, I've asked that question all the way across the country, and everywhere I ask it, no matter where, there's always a huge portion of the audience that won't put up their hand. And I've come to realize that we have made leadership into something bigger than us. We made it into something beyond us. We made it about changing the world. And we've taken this title of leader and we treat it as if it's something that one day we're going to deserve. But to give it to ourselves right now means a level of arrogance or cockiness that we're not comfortable with. And I worry sometimes that we spend so much time celebrating amazing things that hardly anybody can do, that we've convinced ourselves that those are the only things we're celebrating. And we start to devalue the things that we can do every day. And we start to take moments where we truly are a leader, and we don't let ourselves take credit for it, and we don't let ourselves feel good about it. And I've been lucky enough over the last 10 years to work with some amazing people who have helped me redefine leadership in a way that I think has made me happier. And with my short time today, I just want to share with you the one story that is probably most responsible for that redefinition. I went to a school in a little school called Mount Allison University.
Are you all able to hear that? I see.
And on my last day there, a girl came up to me and she said,
"I
remember the first time that I met you."
Okay.
And then she told me a story that happened 4 years earlier. She said, on my day before I started university, I was in the hotel room with my mom and my dad, and I was so scared and so convinced that I couldn't do this, that I wasn't ready for university, that I just burst into tears. And my mom and my dad were amazing. They were like, look, we know you're scared, but let's just go tomorrow. Let's go to the first day, and if at any point you feel as if you can't do this, that's fine. Just tell us, we will take you home. We love you no matter what. And she said, so I went the next day, and I was standing in line getting ready for registration, and I looked around and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had to quit. And she says, I made that decision, and as soon as I made it, there was this incredible feeling of peace that came over me. And I turned to my mom and my dad to tell them that we needed to go home. And just at that moment, you came out of the Student Union building wearing the stupidest hat I have ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And you had a big sign promoting Shinorama, which is Students Fighting Cystic Fibrosis, a charity I've worked with for years. And you had a bucket full of lollipops. And you were walking along and you were handing the lollipops out to people in line and talking about Shinorama. And all of a sudden, you got to me, and you just stopped, and you stared. It was creepy. This girl right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you looked at the guy next to me, and you smiled, and you reached in your bucket, you pulled out a lollipop, and you held it out to him. And you said, you need to give a lollipop to the beautiful woman standing next to you. And she said, I have never seen anyone get more embarrassed faster in my life. He turned beet red, and he wouldn't even look at me. He just kind of held the lollipop out like this. And I felt so bad for this dude that I took the lollipop. And as soon as I did, you got this incredibly severe look on your face, and you looked at my mom and my dad, and you said, look at that, look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from a stranger. And she said everybody lost it. 20 feet in every direction, everyone started to howl. And I know this is cheesy, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but in that moment when everyone was laughing, I knew that I shouldn't quit. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I was home. And I haven't spoken to you once in the 4 years since that day, but I heard that you were leaving. And I had to come up and tell you that you've been an incredibly important person in my life, and I'm gonna miss you. Good luck. And she walks away, and I'm flattened. And she gets about 6 feet away, she turns around and smiles and goes, you should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later. A year and a half after I moved to Toronto, I got an invitation to their wedding. Here's the kicker, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that moment, and I've searched my memory banks because that is funny, and I should remember doing it, and I don't remember it. And that was such an eye-opening, transformative moment for me to think that maybe the biggest impact I'd ever had on anyone's life, a moment that had a woman walk up to a stranger 4 years later and say, you've been an incredibly important person in my life, was a moment that I didn't even remember. How many of you guys have a lollipop moment, a moment where someone said something or did something that you feel fundamentally made your life better? All right. How many of you have told that person they did it? See, why not? We celebrate birthdays where all you have to do is not die for 365 days. And yet we let people who have made our lives better walk around without knowing it. And every single one of you has been the catalyst for a lollipop moment. You have made someone's life better by something that you said or that you did. And if you think you haven't, think about all the hands that didn't go back up when I asked that question. You're just one of the people who hasn't been told. But it is so scary to think of ourselves as that powerful. It can be frightening to think that we can matter that much to other people. Because as long as we make leadership something bigger than us, as long as we keep leadership something beyond us, as long as we make it about changing the world, we give ourselves an excuse not to expect it every day from ourselves and from each other. Marianne Williamson said, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that frightens us." And my call to action today is that we need to get over that. We need to get over our fear of how extraordinarily powerful we can be in each other's lives. We need to get over it so we can move beyond it. And our little brothers and our little sisters, and one day our kids, or our kids right now, can watch us start to value the impact we can have on each other's lives more than money and power and titles and influence. We need to redefine leadership as being about lollipop moments. How many of them we create, how many of them we acknowledge, how many of them we pay forward, and how many of them we say thank you for. Because we've made leadership about changing the world, and there is no world. There's only 6 billion understandings of it. And if you change one person's understanding of it, one person's understanding of what they're capable of, one person's understanding of how much people care about them, one person's understanding of how powerful an agent for change they can be in this world, you change the whole thing. And if we can understand leadership like that, I think if we can redefine leadership like that, I think we can change everything. And it's a simple idea, but I don't think it's a small one. And I want to thank you all so much for letting me share it with you today.
What do you think? What did he do? What choices did he make? How did he make you care? He did that really well. It was very powerful. If you want to share that in the chat, it should be, yes, absolutely, Lisa Anthony. Yes, storytelling and humor. That's a great one. Humor, right? Using emotions, making that connection. He absolutely did create humility, yes. And so these are things that, again, we'll talk about and give you some takeaways to utilize this in your next presentation. Yep, interacting with the crowd. And you definitely need that to stay engaging, to make sure that your audience is connected with you at all times. Good call out there, yes. He also gave us really good visuals through language, right? He utilized that verbal skill, that clarity to make sure we understand and we followed along and we could see. And he kind of just described that you could see where he was standing, and you could picture him holding that lollipop, right? Yes, absolutely. We do relate to stories. Yes. You're right, George. All right. Okay, let's keep moving. I want to give us a roadmap of what we're doing today, what we're focusing on. And there's 3 core presentation skills that make the biggest difference in your confidence and your audience's experience. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We'll look first at how to organize your message so your ideas flow clearly and intentionally. That will include audience analysis, reducing communication noise, and making sure your content is drilled down to a meaningful point that your listeners can remember. We'll look next to connect authentically with your audience. We'll talk about verbal and nonverbal communication and those skills, how to build credibility through presence, and making small adjustments that will make your delivery more engaging. And then we'll focus on presenting with impact. So I'll provide some references to simple visual design principles. We'll talk about the power of storytelling, and that's why I wanted to show you that video to get us started. Some frameworks there and strategies to manage nerves, that highest challenge for our audience today, so that you can show up as your best self. Within each component, I want you to be talking. I want you to be interacting and thinking and connecting with the content. And so we'll have a touch point where you're engaging with it, whether I'm asking you a poll question, a regular question, having you talk in the chat. We'll explore communication concepts and research, practical examples. And then, of course, I want to give you those takeaways, whether it's a challenge, something you can implement right away, but that practical strategy that you can apply immediately. So by the end of our time together, you'll leave with something you can use in your everyday team updates, all the way up to your major organizational presentations. All right, so how do we take all the information we could say and shape it into a message our audience will actually remember? We're going to start with how to organize your message for maximum clarity and impact. So I want you to share your thoughts here with this question and tell me, what makes you stop paying attention during a presentation? So in the chat, just let me know one or two words. Boredom. Yep, you get bored, right? What makes it boring? And so think about kind of what is that initial. Absolutely, Craig. Yes, that is quite bothersome if they're reading slides to you. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Too wordy, another good one. Monotone is one that comes up as well, right? And we'll talk about that as well. Vocal variety, having that. Yes, you can tell when a presenter is not prepared. You can tell when they aren't sure or unsure in what they're presenting, right? Absolutely. All these great responses in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, it's funny how quickly our brains can check out when a presentation just feels disorganized, or maybe it's overwhelming, not engaging, right? It again, you get bored, and so we quickly check out from what's going on. What's happening in those moments is actually science, right? Our brains have limited working memory. So when the message isn't clear or the visuals are competing for our attention, right? There's too much on the screen. We just literally can't process it all. And so that's why organizing your message and simplifying your content, your slides, makes a difference. And it keeps the audience's attention where it belongs, which is on you, the speaker, right? Okay, so there's actually a word for all of this. There's a law about it. This is communication gone wrong. And so communication researcher and Finnish scholar Osmo Wyo famously said, if communication can fail, it will. And there's a few other pieces there that he quotes from that you can take a look at. And those are just some of the famous ones, right? But ultimately, if it can do harm, it will be misunderstood in the way that it does the most harm. And so he studied organizational communication and readability and the way that our messages can get distorted. And what he found is that it's painfully true that most of the time, if communication is going to fail, it's because of the observations that other people make, right? That our human communicators are the equivalent of Murphy's law. So this is like Murphy's law, but for presenters. And we laugh because we've all had a moment where you think, okay, yeah, that presentation went amazing. Like I just explained everything and it went just so perfect. And then you find out later that your audience interpreted it completely different, right? And so it reminds us that clarity is not automatic. What's actually automatic and the default is a misunderstanding. So every time we communicate, there's a potential for that distortion. There's lots of factors that interrupt that. There's noise and assumptions. There's missing context. There's tone, timing, all of which can cloud understanding. So that's why we need to be intentional about how we organize and frame our message. That's why it matters so much. If we don't do that work up front, and like you said in the chat, be prepared and have everything you need for the presentation, then communication failure, according to Murphy's Law or Wyo's Law, is almost guaranteed, right? So that's something that we want to take into consideration as we prepare. Communication is complicated. I think we can all agree with that. And I love sharing this because you really don't think about it till you see it right here in front of you, right? So anytime there are two people having a conversation, there's actually six people in that conversation. This slide illustrates that every interaction contains multiple versions of ourself and multiple versions of the other person. The one we think we are, the one they think they are, and so on. And so again, this is why clarity and intentionality matter so much. So you've got six people having this one conversation, then you get into a presentation and you add 100 more people, right? So what do we need to do? How can we be intentional? How can we provide clarity? Well, we need to get to know our audience. So to organize your message effectively, you need to know who that message is for. Our audience analysis can shape our language, our tone, what examples, stories we include. And without it, misinterpretation or disconnect is definitely going to occur. So you want to ask yourself, who is my audience and what do they know, right? What is their level of expertise? Are they knowledgeable in the topic area that you were discussing? Why do they care about this particular presentation or this topic? Why does it matter to them, right? And why are they here? What do they need to take away from the presentation? So all of this will help you because once we understand who we're speaking to, then the next question becomes, okay, how does communication actually work between us and them? Because even though we know our audience, our message still has to make it through those barriers. Remember that noise, those assumptions, the distractions, the filters, those other people in that one on one conversation that's actually six different people, right? So that's where the interaction model of communication helps. It shows us here, you can see the sender is also the receiver, and you have on this side the sender and receiver. So we kind of see how messages are sent, receives, sometimes completely misunderstood because of that noise in the middle, the physiological context taking place, where it is, all of those environmental factors, the internal noise, external. And so it emphasizes the importance of feedback, and that will help allow for clarity. It will help with negotiating the meaning that is trying to be established by that message. And so we want to use this and understand this when we communicate so that we can create a more dynamic and collaborative exchange. So how do we make it through all of those barriers? We want to reduce that noise, right? And we can't eliminate it. That's impossible. But your job as a presenter is to anticipate where confusion will happen and design around it. So your content, your slide organization, your story structure, that verbal clarity, all of this will help to reduce that noise. Right? So I want to give you a strategy here that I'd like you to implement before every presentation. I want you to ask yourself these three questions. Right? What's my core intent? So effective communicators begin with a clear purpose in mind and audience understanding. This aligns that message construction so that it's going to be understood with the audience needs, right? The second question, what's my one sentence? I love that North Star, right? This is simplifying a presentation into that one guiding sentence. It's going to reduce that cognitive load, help with retention, support understanding. And so you want to make sure that you have that. And then you'll ask, does every slide support that message? So visuals are going to help you, right? You need to look at each one and say, this doesn't even relate. It doesn't need to be in here. It needs to be aligned to that central message so that way they can understand and then recall the information. That's going to increase that significantly. So these three actions form the foundation of every presentation. Even if you just choose one, it'll help you to be more intentional, right? And that's what we want to do. You want to be concise and you want to be memorable. So for your next presentation, organize your message with clarity and intention and ask yourself these three questions. All right, we're going to move on now to connecting authentically using effective verbal and nonverbal skills. And I am going to ask you another question. When it comes to actually delivering a presentation, I want to ask you which part of presenting is most challenging for you. So I am launching that poll once again for you to participate in, and you will see that on your screen. So is it speaking naturally, making eye contact, managing those nerves, using gestures, or staying engaging as a presenter? Almost everyone struggles with at least one of these, if not more than one at some point, even those experienced presenters, right? But the good news is that each of these challenges connect back to the same skill, which is what we're going to talk about, authentic connection. Give you just another 30 seconds, make sure everybody can select their challenge here when they're presenting. Delivery is such an important part, and it actually will become smoother and more natural if you are grounded in your message and you focus on your audience. And so we can address these. Great. Get a few more waiting to take that poll. Again, I'll just give you another moment. And looking here in the chat, yes, I agree with you, David. Public speaking can be very difficult. Absolutely. All right, I'll end our poll here and share the results. And so you can see that. Managing nerves. Okay, so and that matches with what we had pulled earlier, right? With that managing anxiety being the highest. But all of these other pieces will come together again if you focus on being natural, knowing your message, knowing your audience, and we'll get into some strategies for that as well. But this actually brings us to one of the most famous and most misunderstood studies in communication. And here it is for you, the Meridian study. And you probably heard someone say that 93% of communication is nonverbal. That number comes from Meridian's research in the 1970s, but it's actually taken way out of context now. And what Meridian studied is how people interpret feelings and attitudes, not all communication. So in his experiment, you see here on the screen the 55-38-7 rule. He said that when someone's words didn't match their tone or facial expression, people trusted the nonverbal cues over the words. So 55% nonverbal, which is that body language, 38% vocal, the tone of voice, and then 7% the actual words. But he later clarified that this only applies when a message is emotionally charged. So when someone says, I'm fine, but clearly they're not, you can tell, right? So the real key takeaway here is that when your message and delivery don't align, your audience is going to believe your nonverbal cues, not your words. This is directly true in presentations too, right? If your slides say you're confident, prepared, but then you start to speak and your voice sounds uncertain or your posture is closed off, your audience is going to feel that disconnect. On the other hand, when your tone, expression, and message match, then that's going to help you build that trust and credibility with your audience. Your audience doesn't have to guess what you mean, right? They can feel it. So in every presentation, ask yourself, do my words, tone, and body language tell the same story? Because you want that alignment. It's what's going to make your communication memorable. Verbal clarity, the words, right? Do your words tell the same story? So you want to use simple language. You want to be clear. If you have an acronym, you need to define that, right? Avoid using jargon. Make sure that you speak with intentionality, giving those concrete examples. The clearer your words are, the easier message is going to become. So that's the first part of our verbal skills that we're going to talk about. The next is the 4 P's of vocal variety, right? And many of you have likely used these in your presentation, that power, pitch, pace, and passion. And so you have these tools for engagement. Again, you all mentioned in the chat, too much monotone, just it's being that consistent, it might get boring. So you need to have these intentional shifts that signify there's something important coming up, right? And use your emotion. And sometimes you need to be a little bit over emotional, if you will, in your expressions, especially in a virtual setting. You need to use the power of your voice to convey that. And so we'll look into these just in a little bit more detail, each of these. So power is up first, right? You want to project confidently. So you might speak a little louder than normal if you're soft spoken. You can also vary, again, putting emphasis on certain words, raising the level of your volume so that you can show authority when maybe you're providing a recommendation or a solution. Those are good ways to reduce that monotone disconnect, right? Which also is incorporated here in pitch. And so you want to use that tonal variation. The monotone is going to certainly separate you from your audience, and you do not want that. Even technical data you can deliver with some vocal inflection, again, to signify this piece of information is important. You need to be listening. We need to focus on this. One thing I always have to focus on here is pace. You need to slow down. Don't be afraid to pause. Don't be afraid to take a breath. Your audience is following your pace. You are setting the stage. You are setting the tone for that. And so sometimes we naturally speak fast. And so you tend to increase that speech rate when you are giving a presentation. But research shows that well-timed pauses and slowing down increase that retention. So again, you can use that pace to show emphasis, to create that moment for your audience to say, oh, she slowed down or he slowed down quite a bit. Something important must be coming up, or what did I miss if they might have disconnected for a moment? And then being passionate, right? Use your voice again. Use that emotional contagion, show enthusiasm, connect with your audience. They can tell if you care about the topic. They can tell if it's something you want to be talking about. This increases your credibility when you share that emotion. And so you want to use that. Be animated, overly animated for things that you want to stick, especially like Dudley did in his presentation, right? Emphasizing certain areas and really just painting that picture for you with the passion he had about leadership and what he shared. Right. So we looked at the verbal skills. We're going to now move over to nonverbal communication. And first up is something that everybody has likely seen good and bad examples of, and that's eye contact, right? So, eye contact. All right. You want to be comfortable with this. And sometimes this is hard, especially if you know your audience or if it's a small audience, a big audience, but you want to keep those moments short with the eye contact, a few seconds. Otherwise, you have that long staring moment and it gets uncomfortable, right? But this can also build trust. And so you want to use that. When you're in a conversation, how do you know that person's listening? You're making that eye contact. So this piece, this nonverbal skill is really important in those presentations. On those virtual meetings, right, you want to make sure that you are looking at the camera so that they can see your eyes and they know that you're there, you're listening, you're involved in the conversation with those nonverbal expressions from your eyes. Gestures is the next one. You want to use these purposefully. So you can see here that our presenter is using her hands. She's got a little bit of movement with her to emphasize whatever main points, key points that she's talking about. You don't want to close yourself off or cross your arms or put one arm on your other arm and kind of again disconnect yourself from the audience. You want to have that open communication and you want to make sure that you're connecting with the audience, that they know that you're here. And those gestures can really emphasize different points, or when something again important is coming up, that movement is going to again catch your audience's attention. But I mean, there are times that you just might not know what to do
Like I was on a spaceship, and
with your hands, right?
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Be good just to hold them down by your
Okay.
side. Yeah, great.
Well, we were real happy with what was going on, and at the end of the day, you got to be happy.
What did you say his name was?
And so again, you want to make this purposeful, right? Using your hands. And if you don't know what to do with them, the natural fall is just having that good posture and they land right by your waist or by your side. And so part of your nonverbal skills that you want to enhance as you're presenting is to have good posture, to stand up straight or sit up straight, to face your audience. If you're standing, plant your feet, don't lock your knees. I've had presenters that were nervous lock their knees and fell right over, right? So you want to be a little bit loose, but you're again having that good posture, conveying that openness and connectedness with your audience. And then facial expression. So our verbals and nonverbals want to say the same thing. Your face is going to allow for that. So when you're talking about something happy, smile, right? Make that connection, especially when you first come out and introduce yourself. Let your audience know, we're here and we are going to have a good time. You're approachable and you're going to be able to have a conversation together. And so you want to make sure that you're expressing yourself, not contradicting your words, because again, people will default to the nonverbal message. Be genuine with all of your nonverbal skills. Don't overdo it or underdo it. Be natural with it. Confidence and clarity and delivery are going to make sure that that information is believable, right? They're going to be aligned. So nonverbal cues and alignment with your messages will make that delivery more convincing and stronger. All right, if people read your voice and body language right before they hear your words, so remember that your nonverbals carry emotional credibility. So if your verbal and nonverbal messages conflict, the audience will believe the nonverbal messages over the words. Again, that simple statement of "I'm fine," or maybe you're not as enthusiastic about a topic and you say it very monotone, right? Oh, I'm so excited. We're going to talk about this today, right? And again, wait a second, that didn't sound exciting at all. And are you sure you're excited? So you want to make sure that those match. Right, here's your takeaway for your verbal and nonverbal skills and your audience connecting authentically. So I want you to choose one small, deliberate change that can transform how your audience experiences you. And so there's a few on here, but I want you to pick what you want to focus on, the one that feels most natural, right? To try out this week, and then pay attention to how people respond. And I promise you'll be surprised by how much better you feel, how much confidence you'll have just from that one small intentional adjustment. So I want to encourage all of you to practice connecting authentically. All right, so we are now going to focus on presenting with impact. We'll talk a little bit about visuals, storytelling, and that confident delivery, which includes managing anxiety. So that being said, I'm going to throw up another poll here for you to participate in. And I want you to select from the following: what's the worst slide you've ever seen? I'll give you a moment there. And, we talked about this, or some of it came up in the chat earlier, but was it too much text, ugly or distracting, hard to read charts, or those data dumps, just an overwhelming feeling? Maybe it's boring layouts, or maybe there wasn't that connection to the message, right? No clear point. So why is this in here? This doesn't make sense to me. And then again, that pulls you away from the presentation, right? And as you're answering that, I'll just let you know that, when you view these slides, like when you see a text or a slide with too much text, or it's distracting, and think about how that makes you feel as an audience member. It might be that overwhelming feeling. It might be that now you're confused, or you get distracted because you're not sure what you're looking at. And so it's funny because this poll gets a lot of laughs, but we've all seen good, great, and bad slides, right? And so think about those feelings, and maybe that frustration you have when you're an audience member and you're viewing that, because as you're viewing your own slides, that's what your audience might feel if you have a slide that might be cluttered or unclear. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you so you can see. And yeah, our two top ones is the too much text and hard to read slides, or hard to read charts and data dumps. And absolutely, right, that's going to take away. And so we will look now at some impactful visual presentations and simplicity, and why that's important. And we'll address the other ones as well here in just a moment. All right, so impactful visual presentations. When it comes to your visual design, that too much text, right? Your slides aren't meant to say everything. They're meant to show what matters. They support you. So an impactful presentation helps your audience grasp your points faster, and then of course remember it longer. So we want to utilize simplicity. They're not your script. Their job is, again, to provide that support. You don't want your slides to compete with you. And so what you want to do is aim for one core slide. Absolutely, David. Less is more. One core slide per idea, or one idea per slide, right? And then, you can summarize your message in one sentence. Everything becomes easier, your structural, your visuals, your examples, even your transitions. So you want to use your visual, don't have it there just to have it. Make sure it's able to be seen, right? So that you have a good amount of photos and graphics and those type of visuals versus just all text, because that can be hard to sit through as well. Definitely don't read from your slides, which again we talked about earlier, and use them, right? They're there, they serve a purpose, and you created them to make sure they're a resource for you, and they really enhance your presentation. If you want to take a moment and scan this, it's a resource that offers some practical guidance on how you can design visual aids, again, for supporting and enhancing your presentation, for making that message more memorable. It's going to give you the science behind it, the why, and then the how, some steps and tools so that you create more impactful, engaging, and effective visuals. And so I'll give you a moment just to scan that so that you can have that as a takeaway. Really how to create a visual aid is a webinar in itself, right? And so I just wanted to give you some resources on that. I also want to give you a strategy. And so your takeaway for this is a strategy, the 331 strategy, some principles that you can use to make sure that you achieve those goals, that they're clear, focused, and then of course that they're memorable, right? They're making that contribution to your presentation. So this strategy helps you design slides that are going to do that, and they're easy to follow. And so if your audience can understand your point within 3 seconds, you've done your job, right? And then you limit those visuals. So 3 visual elements on there. And then that same idea, 1 idea per slide. You communicate that and follow that as you're building out your presentation. And that is really going to help you. So I encourage you to do that as you're preparing for a presentation, and you're going to incorporate a visual, that you utilize the 331 slide strategy. All right, something that we opened with, and that is a really important part of who we are as human beings, is the art of storytelling. We've seen how visuals help with our audience. They can help them see the message, right? But what do we want our audience to do? We want them to feel it. We want them to feel, and the story helps with that. And as you all were mentioning in the chat, this is something we're wired for. Our brains like this, from childhood. We've learned through narrative, right? Through our beginnings, turning points, challenges. It's how we've made sense of the world and how we make sense of the world. So even when you include a short story in your presentation, it gives your audience something they can connect to emotionally. So I'll give you a moment here to share in the chat. What's a story from a past presentation that has stuck with you? Right? What's your, like the lollipop moment that we just viewed, but what is one that you can say that is very memorable and something that stands out to you, that when you think of a good presentation, that's a story that sticks out in your mind? I think every powerful presentation definitely has a story in it, right? And people are 20 times more likely to remember a story than a fact alone. So when you connect that to a story, then that really makes an impact. And yet relatable, right? Absolutely, Glorianne. If it's relatable, you don't just throw a story in there to have a story in there. It's in there it serves a purpose, for a reason, right? It's making a connection. Oh, Melanie, good one. Yes. That absolutely heartfelt. Yes. I do, Erica, love the marbles in the jar. It is an excellent example. And again, it makes you think, and takes you back. Like I can visually see her giving that presentation. Excellent examples. Thank you all for sharing. You can continue to share. I'm going to keep us moving along, and just remind you that storytelling doesn't have to be long or dramatic, right? We want to make those connections. We want it to be memorable, and it can also help kind of clarify our message and and make sure that it's not misunderstood, that it's not misinterpreted. So one way is Freytag's pyramid. So think about something as simple as 30 seconds and giving an example, a moment of learning, a little quick illustration that connects what you're presenting to real life. So that relatable story, right? The key is to give your message that clear arc. So it's got the beginning, middle, and end, and your audience knows where they are in the story, like Freytag's pyramid. So we'll dive in a little deeper. If we borrow from this classic storytelling structure, these are the parts of it, right? So we set the scene, introduce the context right at the onset in the exposition. Then we move to, okay, the moment something changes, something happens, that spark. From there, it's a challenge, a decision, an obstacle, that tension is building, that rising action is taking place. And then you move to that crisis, the turning point, that where the stakes or the emotions peak, a problem needs to be solved, and you come to that climax, that key moment, the breakthrough realization, something changes. You start to wrap up with that falling action where the resolution might start to begin, and we see some type of results unfolding. We're starting to wrap up, and then finally end with that resolution where you close the story with that meaning, that key takeaway, that lesson learned, right? And so you can kind of utilize this, and in 30 seconds to a minute if you need it, but in 30 seconds, yes, you can definitely utilize this pyramid for that simple storytelling. And even real world stories can follow this rhythm, right? So maybe you're in a meeting and you're discussing some numbers with your team. And so you might say something like, well, our new leadership program increased engagement by 20%. Instead of saying that, you could create a story around it, a short one, right? So set the scene. 3 months ago, one of our new supervisors told me she finally felt confident leading her team. That's when I knew the program was working. So you're conveying that this program is successful, but you're doing it by transforming that data into some type of meaning, right? So see the difference? Because again, stories turn information into connection. So that's what we want to do. They make your audience care. And when people care, they remember. There is another framework that you can start using as storytelling in your presentations is the point story application. And this will help with focus. And again, every story you tell actually serves your message. It doesn't become tangent. So if you break it down, it's the point. So what's that key idea you want your audience to remember? The headline of your story, if you will. Then what example brings that to life? So here is where you tell that moment from your own experience, a client, a team member, or share a simple scenario. And then that application, how does it connect to your audience and tie it back to them? Because that's where meaning and relevance click into place, right? So stories are powerful. They help your audience connect emotionally to what you want to remember intellectually. So here is your challenge for your next presentation. Add just one short 30-second story. Doesn't have to be dramatic or deeply personal, just real and of course relevant. So a good story could be a quick win, illustrating progress. It could be a failure that taught you something important, a turning point, changed your perspective, a personal moment that connects you to your message, or a client or student example that brings your idea to life. So I challenge you to incorporate a 30-second story in your next presentation. All right, managing anxiety. I'm going to do a quick check-in with one of my favorite questions. And I launched that for you. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how anxious are you about speaking? Let's see where our audience falls. 1 means, yeah, not anxious at all. Maybe you actually enjoy presenting. 5 means, yeah, my heart is racing and just thinking about it, I'm really, really anxious. Right. As you're selecting that, it's always interesting to see and realize once we view the results here, but it's really common. Most groups I work with end up somewhere in the middle with 3 or 4 that moderate to somewhat severe anxiety, and that's completely normal. And actually, a little bit of nervous energy is a good thing. It's your body saying that this matters to you. Your presentation matters. What you're doing matters. What you're presenting on matters. And so we don't want to eliminate that feeling. We want to channel it. I'm sure you can think of speakers that you've seen, and they have anxiety as well. Every speaker has anxiety. It's one of the most common things in the world. All right, I'll let you all see where we have, and 3 is right in the middle, right? So moderate anxiety. Some with no anxiety or minimal, and just and a few with severe anxiety. And so I want to talk with you now about that common fear, because it has a name, right? It actually has a name. It's called glossophobia, which literally means fear of the tongue. And as you can see here, it affects about 75% of people to some degree, which is definitely backed by our poll here. But yeah, we have mild nervousness all the way up to severe anxiety. And so what's interesting is that this doesn't mean you're underprepared or not prepared or incapable. It's just that physiological response. Your brain perceives public speaking as a threat, and your body reacts, whether it's that shaky hands, rapid heartbeat, dry mouth, that feeling of uncertainty. But the good news is, like any other fear, it can be managed. So we're going to look at some strategies that you can use to calm your body, focus your mind, and deliver your message with confidence to your audience. You've probably heard of the spotlight effect. It's a physiological term that describes how we tend to overestimate how much other people notice us. Well, when we're speaking, it feels like every little pause, every stumble, every bit of nervousness you feel is amplified under a huge spotlight. And that's not the case. In reality, your audience doesn't see those things nearly as much as you think. In fact, I tell many of the presenters I work with that unless you tell your audience you're nervous, oh gosh, I'm so nervous, or my hands are shaking, they wouldn't be able to tell because they're not analyzing you, right? They're listening to you for meaning. So once you realize that, it takes a lot of pressure off. And your goal isn't to perform perfectly, it's to communicate clearly and remember, connect authentically. So that's what people are going to remember. These are the ways that you can do that, knowing your topic. So again, all what we talked about at the beginning, getting organized, making sure that you have that logical flow and you close strong. Practice, practice, practice. There is no substitute for this. Rehearsing your material, running through, even just out loud to yourself, is going to build that muscle memory. Challenging those worries. So again, that uncertainty. What if I forget my words, or what if people look bored? Instead of doing that, ask yourself, what's a realistic outcome? Things that you can control. So when you plan for those fears, they lose your power, and your peers are going to be along this ride with you, and it will be setting yourself up for success, which is that next one. So visualize that you're going to do well, you're ready for this, you're feeling confident, you've done these other pieces, you know your material, and you're organized, and you're ready to go. And if you are very, very anxious, you can focus on your material. You can still make that connection with the audience, but you don't have to worry about how you're being perceived. You can shift that over to, you're delivering this message, your energy is going to go from inward to outward, and then that can also help naturally calm your nerves. So again, asking yourself, what do they need from me? I talked about this briefly, but don't fear silence. Use silence, pause, take a break, grab a drink of water. We're all human. And I like the last two because I think all of these complement each other, but celebrate your successes. Make sure that you don't think immediately like, oh, I can't believe I did that, or I forgot to say this. Celebrate like, I did really good. Yeah, dress for success, good one. Yes. So build that, like I explained that exactly the way I wanted to explain it. And, I saw people smiling and nodding, and they were in agreement. And I know that they got it. I saw those light bulbs go off. Get support, practice with someone. That support will accelerate your growth. So managing anxiety isn't about one big fix. It's all these little small consistent habits that we can build and be more comfortable over time. All right, so your takeaway strategy here, there's some techniques that you can use. You can use any of these as kind of a quick ritual before your presentations. It's going to help boost your confidence, calm your nerves, and center your focus. And so I've have these listed here for you if you want to grab a screenshot, but these are just ways that you can help prepare when you want to project that confidence and authority. When you're just going out to present, you feel like you've calmed those nerves. And then, of course, you've practiced and utilized your voice. You've warmed your vocal cords. You're ready for that performance, and you're going to give the best you, the best version of yourself. They only take a few minutes, so it's going to change how you show up. Pick one, make it a habit, try all of them, but have a pre-presentation reset button to help you manage that anxiety. All right, so we covered quite a bit today, but ultimately I wanted you to organize your message, connect authentically, and present with impact. So I want to highlight this again. The truth is, confident presenting is not about perfection. It's about purpose, presenting with purpose. So if you leave here and practice even one of the strategies that we discussed today, I know that you'll see your confidence and connection grow with every presentation you give. With that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Daniel to wrap us up. And again, I thank you so much for your contributions in the chat. Wonderful to have all of you here today, and look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Dr. Daniel.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. A lot of useful tips on improving the impact and effectiveness of our presentations. We hope that you enjoyed today's presentation. For those of you already partnered with ACU, we are grateful for your partnership and hope you find these presentations as a value to you and your organizations. If this is your first experience with Abilene Christian University and you're interested in having your organization partner with ACU, please reach out to us at the email provided. You can also learn more about partnering with ACU as well as our full suite of professional development resources by going to the URL or using the QR codes on the slide. Please also wait for the survey. We value your feedback. Thank you, and please have a great rest of your day.